I did the internal stuff at my previous job, but now I'm back to kind of doing external work, and it's a little bit more quantifiable your value to your company when have to bill out these invoices to your clients. So um, maybe it's a little bit more rewarding for myself in this role that it's easy to quantify it and tell people what I do.
Welcome to the Junior Jobs Podcast, where we give new software engineers actionable job search advice relevant to today's job market. In today's developer interview, I'm talking with Brian Leithead, who will break down the difference between software development and software consulting to help you decide which may be a better route for you. And let me know in the comments what other career paths in the technology space you'd be interested in hearing more about, and I'll find somebody to interview on that topic in a future session. Our sponsor for today is David Roberts with Crushing Digital, who is offering our listeners 30% off their video series called Standing Out in Tech, which covers every aspect of the junior developer job search. Just click the link in the show notes and enter the code JuniorJobs30, one word, at checkout to get your discount. So Brian, I want to break down some of your experience here at the Junior Jobs Podcast. We're all about helping new developers get that first job in tech. But I actually, for you, want to talk about your second job in tech. So to summarize for listeners here, and stop me if I'm wrong, Brian, you were a web developer for about 5 months as your first software engineering role. But then 5 months into it, you jumped into IT consulting. So a lot of developers that I talk to don't understand the difference between a software engineer versus a consultant, or when they look for job opportunities, they're very focused on that software engineering title, but they don't really think about all the other kind of tech related roles that are, around the programming space. So I like to break down some of that difference here for you to give our audience a clearer picture into that. So first, I'd like to start with, and from your perspective, what is your day to day like, or how is it different, and how is it the same when you were a web developer versus now as an IT consultant?
Yeah, so I would say starting off, kind of the major difference between what I do now and what I did before is my role is actually front facing. Um, so the consultant in my particular job is, yes, I'm still doing all this developing. Right now, I'm actually working on a Microsoft Power App for a client. Um, it's kind of component based, but not to get in the weeds too much. But I would say the main difference is that I'm front facing. So I actually like do Teams calls or even an actual phone call with the clients that we're working for. Whereas with a software engineer, at least in my particular instance before, I wasn't front facing. I was all doing our website front end. So I created like a Trello board for all of our tickets that need to be answered. So um, it, yeah, I mean, obviously you're going to be working internally and collaborating with things with your web developer, software engineer, but and the same is true of an IT consultant if you're working for a company, but you're more front facing. So customer service.
Yeah, so when I think about the difference between those two roles, I think it's a great opportunity for a junior developer to kind of personally evaluate where their own skill sets lie, or maybe what their non-technical experience is in, because you might be able to leverage that to get into consulting. So if you are naturally more extroverted, or maybe you worked in like retail or marketing, you have customer service experience. All of that is going to be important if you're on site with the client, on phone calls with the client, because you're to your company, you are a billable resource that is earning them money because they're selling your time, and the customers are going to want to be with you, see you, work with you. Uh, versus if you're more introverted, maybe a little more shy, maybe just going for that software engineering in-house behind the scenes role might be uh, better for you. What do you think of that?
Yeah, no, great point, for sure. And I come from, I actually, when I was younger, I did stand up comedy for 5 years. I host MCs, and I know it's not what we're the main focus of the podcast, but it's kind of trying to paint the picture of I did comedy. I loved making people laugh. I love talking to people on the street, in the crowd, whatever the case was. But to the journey for me from there to now, and I also worked in the mortgage industry, which I talked to a lot of clients. Some were very happy to talk to me, others were not. But that's you kind of learn to deal with that. And then yeah, I did the internal stuff at my previous job. But now I'm back to kind of doing external work. And it's a little bit more quantifiable, your value to your company, when have to bill out these invoices to your clients. So um, eh, maybe it's a little bit more rewarding for myself in this role, that it's easy to quantify and tell people what I do.
Yeah, because you are a revenue generating activity for your company, as opposed to if you're working back house maintaining some systems, you are a cost center for your company. So they may be willing to more invest in you as a consultant in your education and your growth, because that means they can bill more for your time and the company can make more money. Whereas if you're working software engineering in-house for a system that's not generating revenue, then they're going to be trying to maybe cut costs or paying you less. So that's in a dynamic to pay attention to
Sure,
as
for
well.
sure.
So for the interview process here, was it typically the same for your software engineering role versus your consulting role, or is there anything that you noticed that was different about how they approach the interview process?
Yeah. Again, they're kind of looking for more folks with kind of that customer service background, or at least an outgoing and kind of a cultural fit. Because at the end of the day, we're still collaborating and we're still doing all the things that software engineers do. It's just, again, that I think that main difference is that we're talking to clients on the outside of the building. But as far as the interview process, it was mostly the same here, just because they kind of had the idea that they needed someone to work on smaller and internal projects. Like, I didn't have to do um, what's it called, the like hacker rank, where I would have to do that for software, because I'm not going in and necessarily having to update legacy code. I'm building stuff up from the ground up, and I think I like that a little bit
Mhm.
more, just as far as beginning out or beginning my career. And that's one feedback for myself, is I'm not really good at reading other people's code. I can obviously get to it after some research, but just early on, I like, it's transitioning from boot camp. It's like where you build your own projects and stuff like that. So I'm a lone wolf here in a sense, but obviously I have senior and ownership to collaborate with. So
Mhm. Yeah, it's a good distinction there about the hacker rank importance in a software engineering interview versus an IT consultant interview. I also started my career in consulting, and that aligns with my experience as well. The interview process was easier in that sense that there was less technically focused on a specific language, and they were more interested in generic problem solving, and just your consultant demeanor, your professionalism, and your communication skills.
yeah,
So
exactly.
that might be easier as well if you're naturally a problem solver. Um, or I should say, it may be easier for you to get into a consulting type role than a in-house software engineering role for that reason.
Yeah, yeah. Again, and I know a lot during the pandemic there were a lot of waiters, waitresses, or waiting staff, I should say, transitioning into tech. So this would actually be, if you're looking for something that where you're still can be in that outgoing role, but also develop software, that'd be something to kind of narrow your focus down on. And there, even if you wanted to start your own firm eventually, it's definitely a path for sure.
And I don't know if this principle applies for all types of consulting, but it was my experience working as a software consultant. But I feel like consultancies are financially motivated to hire uh, lots of junior developers because, at least for the consultancies I worked with, that is where these consultancies made the majority of their income. They would charge a senior rate, they would pay you a junior rate, and that gap was how much they were able to take home. Yes, they were able to increase your rate as you got more experience and as you were better, but usually that margin diminished because they had to pay you more as well.
Yeah, and again, because we're a software as a service company, our particular ownership is very also motivated to give pay increases faster than maybe the yearly rate or whatever it is, just because they establish value quickly and you know problem solving very quickly and ramp up, and you got yourself a faster maybe pay raise too. But that I won't guarantee in the job search. It just in my particular instance was a nice feature.
Yeah. Another difference that I'd like to get your thoughts on. So you mentioned you're not working with legacy code as a consultant. You're coming in, you're doing what we call green field development, right? The whole landscape is open in front of you, and you're typically called in to, build some new solution. Versus your last company, tell me about that system. It was just some legacy system that you were maintaining. Or can you walk me through some of the details of the specific differences between the projects that you were
Yeah,
on?
so as of right now, again, I could probably get into legacy code as I get further along, but this particular instance, I'm building, model-driven apps from the ground up. Obviously, we're doing some data migration from like SQL or something like that, but in my previous job, I was just the front end developer, and whatever was essentially served up from the back end because it was an e-commerce platform as of BigCommerce. So it had all of its test and integration built in, but obviously you could write custom code. And yeah, early on, I did struggle looking at that in my previous job, but it just got to the point where we were just building new pages for brands or whatever marketing wanted to add or make it look pretty, right? Um, so that's
Mhm.
probably the big distinction between that is now again just currently I'm just working from the ground up on building new things.
And how often are you or people in your company at this consultancy, how often are they changing projects, going to new clients? Do you have an understanding of like the average duration that somebody is staffed at a location?
Yeah, we have probably I want to say like 90 active projects right now, anywhere from migrating from old frameworks to a newer frame. So there is some migration and building up from legacy code, but they kind of leave that more to the seniors. We have three senior consultants or three senior developers here. I like to call them the three amigos. Um, they're all very helpful, but those are kind of the projects that they're focusing on. And then I have myself and another junior developer kind of working on these model driven smaller support projects, what we call them. Um, and then the owner, who is very well versed in code, been in the business for over 30 years, is the one who's kind of driving sales, doing all the going to all the nice lunches and golf outings. So,
He's having fun. He's living his best
oh
life.
yeah, he,
Yeah.
he deserves it. So,
So how long though do you know that the contract is going to be for at this client?
so our typical large project, quote unquote, we kind of have like these obviously milestones and projects. So we um, having a SharePoint or yeah, on a SharePoint. If it's anything that's over 24 days, it's usually I would say our average large project is 25 to 40 days. Anything kind of less than that would be considered like
Okay.
a smaller a support task. So,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
So the consultancies I worked with before were a little bit longer, but our average engagement duration was probably 6 months to a year before you get rotated off to a different client engagement. So as far as those juniors listening to this, what that typically means is that it's the benefit is it's kind of like when you were in school, where every semester, every school year is kind of a fresh start. Your grades are left behind, and you can throw away all of those errors and issues and the stress from before, and you can start fresh in a new opportunity. So that's the benefit I would say from consultancy. You start from the ground up, and you can start fresh. Whereas if you're working in house, you're typically going to be working on the same system or same suite of systems and just iterating over that over and over again. Which means if you made a mistake in a decision you made 2 years ago, well, that's going to come back and that's going to bite you again, and now you have to deal with it. The added benefit there is that you learn how to build more like maintainable code, I would say, because you know that you are going to be the one responsible for maintaining it in the long run.
right, right.
So knowing that what you know now about consulting versus software engineering, Would you recommend people go straight into consulting and target that? Or do you think that you went the ideal route, going in-house software engineering and then going into consulting?
Uh, from my personal journey, I would say I would target IT consulting first. But for anyone who's listening, I would say it depends. Again, it kind of goes back to what you want, like what your personality aligns with. So I would personally recommend IT consulting if you're like an outgoing or an extroverted introvert, or I'm sorry, no, introverted extrovert. That's it. Where you're comfortable talking to people, and you feel like you can explain something even if it's kind of overly complicated in a simple way. That was actually in my on my resume. Was I translate technical jargon for non-technical people. So I don't know if that's one of the key points that landed me this job, but this is kind of was my specialty, explaining complex things to, a common folk.
Yeah, there are even more outside of this consulting and software engineering options that in future episodes I'm looking forward to breaking down so that developers coming out of a boot camp kind of understand all the options in front of them to help them navigate that job search more effectively. Because so many people, I feel like, just go for the software engineer title, but don't really understand a lot of the nuance here that may be a better fit for them given their experience and their background. Well, Brian, I just want to say thank you for coming on today. That's all the time that we have. So, really appreciate you taking the time and really grateful to anybody that's listening as well. Stay tuned. We'll have next published episode next week, and we will see you all next time.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to the Junior Jobs Podcast. We hope you found today's interview helpful as you navigate your own job search in tech. If you enjoyed the show, please remember to like and subscribe as that helps us reach more developers in need. And don't forget to check the show notes for details on today's sponsor and other job search services that we provide. Thanks for listening and have a great day.